The Terran Council chambers fell silent as the holographic display showed the final evacuation ships departing Earth's atmosphere. Ambassador watched through the massive viewport as humanity's last desperate exodus unfolded before her eyes. Thousands of vessels, ranging from massive colony ships to hastily converted cargo haulers, streaked away from the blue marble that had been home to their species for. "The quarantine zone is now in effect," announced High Counselor, his crystalline form catching the light as he gestured with one of his four arms. "No vessel shall approach within 50 astronomical units of the Sol system. The humans have been granted safe passage to the designated sectors, where they may establish whatever primitive settlements their limited capabilities allow." His jaw tightened, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species nodded in agreement or displayed their alien equivalents of approval. The delegation's tentacles writhed with what she recognized as satisfaction. The ambassador's chitinous exoskeleton clicked rhythmically, their version of applause. "Counselor," said, rising from her seat, "I must protest this decision once more. Humanity has contributed significantly to the Galactic Alliance. Our research in quantum mechanics alone has—" "Has what?" interrupted the hulking representative, his massive frame casting a shadow across several nearby seats. "Produced weapons that nearly destroyed a star system, created unstable wormholes that threatened civilian shipping lanes. Your species' reckless experimentation has endangered everyone in this galaxy." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber, felt the weight of their collective judgment pressing down on her. The Prometheus incident, humanity's failed attempt to create a stable artificial wormhole, had indeed caused devastating spatial distortions in the 442 system. The explosion had been visible from 40 light-years away, and the resulting gravitational anomalies had taken months to stabilize. "That was an accident," replied firmly. "Our scientists were working within established safety parameters." "Your safety parameters?" spat the ambassador, her multiple eyes glowing with disdain. "Human safety parameters, not galactic standards. You rushed ahead without consultation, without oversight, driven by that destructive human trait, ambition." The counselor raised a hand for silence. "The decision has been made. Humanity's membership in the Galactic Alliance is hereby revoked. Your species will be relocated to Sectors 7 Alpha through 12 Gamma, where you may pursue your development without endangering civilized space. This is not a punishment, Ambassador. It is a necessity." Looked around the chamber one final time. These beings had once welcomed humanity with cautious optimism when first contact had been established 3 decades ago. Humans had proven themselves capable of adaptation, learning galactic languages and customs with remarkable speed. They had contributed art, music, and scientific insights that had enriched the Alliance. But they had also proven unpredictable. Where other species preferred careful, methodical progress spanning centuries, humans compressed innovation into decades or even years. Their emotional volatility, their tendency toward risk-taking, their inability to accept impossible as a final answer, these traits had made them valuable allies and dangerous. "I understand," said quietly, "but you're making a mistake. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to adapt and overcome adversity. You may think you're protecting the galaxy from us, but you're also depriving yourselves of what we could accomplish together." "Perhaps," replied with something that might have been sympathy, "but the risk is simply too great. Your people will be monitored from a safe distance. Should they develop technologies that pose a threat to galactic security, appropriate measures will be taken." The implicit threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Gathered her belongings and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. As she reached the door, she turned back one last time. "When we prove you wrong, and we will, remember this moment. Remember that you had the chance to stand beside us instead of against us." The door sealed behind her, with a finality that seemed to echo through her bones. 3 months later, stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Horizon, watching as their new home came into view. The planet designated as Terra Nova was a harsh, unforgiving world at the edge of what had once been Alliance space. Its atmosphere was barely breathable, its continents by volcanic activity, and its weather patterns dominated by violent storms that could last for months. "Not exactly the garden world they promised us," muttered Captain Sarah, his longtime friend and the ship's commanding officer. "Gravity's 15% higher than Earth normal, atmospheric pressures all wrong, And according to our surveys, the soil's going to need massive terraforming before we can grow anything substantial. Nodded, studying the data streams flowing across the bridge displays. Around them, the New Horizons crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces reflecting a mixture of determination and uncertainty. These were humanity's best and scientists, engineers, doctors, teachers, and leaders who had volunteered to establish the first colony in exile. "How many ships made it to the designated sectors?" asked. "Final count is 437 vessels," reported Communications Officer Wei. "Total population approximately 2.3 million. We're spread across 16 different systems, with the largest concentrations in the Alpha and Beta sectors." Felt a pang of loss. Earth's population had numbered nearly 12 billion when the evacuation began. Most had chosen to remain behind, either unable to accept the reality of exile or unwilling to abandon everything they had ever known. The Alliance had promised to maintain the quarantine while allowing those who remained to live out their lives in isolation. "Any word from Earth?" she asked quietly. Wei's expression darkened. "Long-range communications are being jammed. The Alliance is maintaining complete information blackout. As far as they're concerned, the Sol system no longer exists." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Walked to the main viewport and placed her hand against the reinforced. In the distance, Terra Nova hung like a bronze coin against the star field, its surface mottled with the browns and grays of a world that had never known gentle rains or green forests. "Captain," she said finally, "begin orbital surveys and establish temporary shelters in the southern continent's river valleys. We'll need to move fast if we want to have basic infrastructure before the storm season hits." "Yes, ma'am. What about the other colonies? Any coordination efforts?" Considered the question carefully. The Alliance had scattered humanity across multiple systems, clearly hoping that isolation would prevent them from pooling their resources or coordinating their efforts. It was a clever strategy: divide and weaken. "Start with coded transmissions to the other Alpha Sector colonies," she decided. "If the Alliance wants to monitor us, let them, but they can't stop us from talking to each other." Over the following weeks, threw herself into the monumental task of establishing a viable colony on a hostile world. The first shelters were prefabricated modules dropped from orbit, their environmental systems working overtime to maintain livable conditions against Terra Nova's harsh atmosphere. Teams of engineers worked around the clock to establish power generation facilities, while atmospheric processors began the slow work of making the air breathable. The work was and dangerous. 3 colonists died in the first week when a shelter seal failed during a dust storm. A geological survey team was nearly lost when unexpected seismic activity triggered a landslide. Equipment failed with alarming frequency, and supply shortages forced constant improvisation. But also witnessed something remarkable during those early days. The same human traits that had so frightened the Alliance, creativity, adaptability, stubborn refusal to accept defeat, were exactly what they needed to survive. When standard atmospheric processors proved inadequate for Terra Nova's unique atmospheric composition, Dr. Hawthorne's team redesigned them using principles borrowed from submarine life support systems. When food production estimates fell short, agricultural specialist Carlos developed hydroponic systems that could function in low light and high gravity. Most importantly, watched as the colonists began to work together in ways that transcended old Earth divisions. Former corporate executives worked alongside university professors to solve engineering problems. Military veterans shared leadership responsibilities with civilian administrators. The harsh reality of their situation had stripped away many of the artificial barriers that had once divided humanity. "We're receiving responses from the other colonies," Wei reported one evening as reviewed production schedules in her temporary office. "Looks like everyone's facing similar challenges, but Alpha 7 reports successful adaptation of their mining equipment for excavation work, and Beta 2 has developed some kind of improved water reclamation system." "Good, start organizing regular data exchanges. Every innovation, every successful adaptation, share it with everyone. We're stronger together than apart." "The Alliance monitoring stations are definitely picking up our transmissions," Wei warned. "They might not like increased coordination between colonies." Looked up from her data pad with a grim smile. Let them watch. They wanted to see what humanity could accomplish in isolation, They're about to find out that exile doesn't make us weaker, it makes us more resourceful. As weeks turned to months, began to see the truth of her words. Reports from the other colonies painted a picture of rapid adaptation and innovation. The harsh worlds that were supposed to contain and weaken humanity were instead becoming proving grounds for human ingenuity. Each challenge overcome made them stronger. Each problem solved added to their collective knowledge base. But the most significant development came 6 months after planetfall, when Doctor's research team made an unexpected discovery. Found herself standing in a hastily constructed laboratory deep beneath Terra Nova's surface, staring at readings that everything she thought she knew about physics. "You're certain about these measurements?" she asked, studying the data for the third time. Doctor nodded enthusiastically. "The quantum resonance patterns are unlike anything we've ever seen. Terra Nova's unusual geology creates natural quantum field amplifications that shouldn't be possible according to standard models. But here they are." Felt a chill of recognition. This is similar to what the Prometheus team was trying to achieve artificially. Similar but more stable. Much more stable. The natural quantum fields here could potentially allow for controlled manipulation of space-time without the catastrophic energy requirements that destroyed Prometheus Station. The implications hit like a physical blow. Humanity had been exiled to worlds the Alliance considered worthless, hostile environments on the fringes of civilized space. But what if these worlds possessed unique properties that the Alliance's surveys had missed? What if humanity's banishment had accidentally placed them in proximity to resources and phenomena that could revolutionize faster-than-light travel? "How many of the other colony worlds show similar anomalies?" she asked. "We're still analyzing data from the other sites, but preliminary reports suggest at least half of them have unusual quantum signatures. It's like the Alliance chose these worlds specifically for their quantum instability, probably thinking it would make them harder for us to develop." Laughed despite herself. The Alliance's attempt to weaken humanity by exiling them to unstable, dangerous worlds had instead provided access to natural laboratories for the very research they feared humans would pursue. It was ironic justice on a cosmic scale. "Doctor, I want you to coordinate with research teams on every colony world. Share everything, every measurement, every theory, every failed experiment. If we're sitting on a potential breakthrough in space-time manipulation, I want to know about it." "What about Alliance monitoring? They'll notice increased scientific collaboration." His expression hardened. "Let them notice. They wanted to keep us isolated and contained. But they forgot something important about human nature. We're at our best when our backs are against the wall." Over the following months, watched as her suspicions proved correct. The exile worlds weren't just harsh environments. They were quantum laboratories unlike anything in the explored galaxy. The Alliance's own survey teams had missed the significance of the unusual readings because no known species had ever attempted the kind of ambitious space-time research that had led to the Prometheus incident. But humans weren't like other species. Where others saw danger and instability, humans saw opportunity and challenge. The same reckless ambition that had frightened the Alliance was now driving innovations that could reshape interstellar travel. Stood in her office late one evening, reviewing progress reports from across the exile colonies. Outside her window, Terra Nova's alien constellations cast strange shadows across the growing settlement. In just under a year, humanity had transformed hostile worlds into thriving research centers. They had taken exile and turned it into opportunity. "Ma'am," Wei's voice came through the comm system, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Beta 7 colony. Dr. Harrison's team reports a significant breakthrough in their quantum field research." Smiled as she activated the communication array. The Alliance had tried to silence humanity by cutting them off from galactic civilization. They had scattered human colonies across the most remote and dangerous systems in known space, hoping that isolation and hardship would break their spirit. Instead, they had given humanity exactly what it needed to develop the technologies that would change everything. The exile was about to end, but not in the way the Alliance expected. "Put Dr. Harrison through," said, "and begin preparing a general transmission to all colony worlds. I think it's time we started coordinating our efforts more formally." As the communication connected, and Dr. Harrison's excited voice filled her office, looked out at the alien stars and felt a surge of fierce pride. The Alliance had cast humanity aside and left them to fade in the darkness between the stars. They were about to learn that humans didn't fade, they burned brighter. 2 years had passed since humanity's exile, and Doctor found herself standing before the most remarkable sight she had ever witnessed. Deep beneath Terra Nova's surface, in a cavern hollowed out by controlled quantum excavation, humanity's greatest achievement hummed with barely contained power. The Prometheus Gate stretched 40 meters across, its crystalline framework crackling with energy patterns that bent light around its edges. Unlike the catastrophic failure of the original Prometheus station, this gateway maintained perfect stability through a revolutionary understanding of quantum field dynamics, understanding that had only been possible on these exile worlds. "Final calibrations complete," reported Doctor, her voice tight with excitement and nervous energy. "The quantum resonance chambers are operating at 97% efficiency. We're ready for the first test." Nodded, watching as technicians made last-minute adjustments to the gate's control systems. Around the cavern, representatives from all 16 exile colonies had gathered to witness this moment. The past 2 years had seen unprecedented cooperation between the scattered human settlements, sharing resources and knowledge with an efficiency that would have seemed impossible during Earth's fractured final days. "Dr. Harrison, what's the status of the test probe?" asked. The elderly physicist consulted his tablet, his weathered face creased with concentration. "Probe 7 is ready for deployment. Full sensor package, quantum beacon for tracking, and enough power for a 48-hour mission. If our calculations are correct, it should be able to travel to the 442 system and back in under 6 hours." Felt a flutter of anticipation mixed with apprehension. 442 was the system where humanity's original Prometheus experiment had nearly created a stellar catastrophe. If their new gate technology could successfully reach that system and return safely, it would prove that they had not only overcome the flaws in their original design, but had achieved something no other species in the galaxy possessed: true instantaneous interstellar travel. "Alliance monitoring stations?" inquired. "Still maintaining their perimeter," replied Captain Sarah. 52 AU from Sol, as agreed. "They've increased surveillance around our colonies over the past 6 months, but they haven't interfered with our activities. Probably think we're just struggling to survive on these dead rocks." Smiled grimly. Let the Alliance maintain their assumptions. The past 2 years had taught humanity valuable lessons about the power of being underestimated. While the galactic powers monitored them for signs of dangerous weapons research, humanity had developed something far more revolutionary: a technology that could make weapons irrelevant. "All stations report ready," announced the chief technician. "Quantum fields stable, targeting parameters locked, probe deployment systems green across the board." Took a deep breath and stepped forward to the control platform. Around her, the assembled representatives of humanity's exile waited in tense silence. This moment would determine whether the past 2 years of hardship and innovation had led to breakthrough or disaster. "Initialize the gate sequence," she commanded. The Prometheus Gate came alive with swirling energies that seemed to exist in colors beyond normal human perception. The crystalline framework resonated with a deep harmonic tone that felt in her bones. Reality began to bend and twist within the gate's confines, creating a vortex of spacetime that opened onto somewhere else entirely. "Quantum tunnel established," Doctor reported, her voice filled with wonder. "Stable wormhole achieved, target lock-on confirmed." "Deploy the probe," ordered. The sleek sensor platform shot through the gate like a bullet, its quantum signature vanishing from local sensors as it transited the impossible distance to another star system in mere seconds. For a moment, the cavern held its collective breath. "Probe telemetry received," Dr. Harrison shouted. "It's there, it's actually there. Sensor readings confirm arrival in the 442 system. The probe is conducting its survey now." Watched the data streams flowing across her display, each reading confirmation that humanity had achieved something extraordinary. The probe was successfully surveying a star system over 30 light-years away, transmitting data through a quantum tunnel that remained perfectly stable despite energies that would have torn apart any conventional spacecraft. "Wait," Doctor frowned at her readings. "I'm detecting something unusual. The probe's sensors are picking up artificial structures in the 442 system. Large ones." Moved to study's display. The sensor data was clear but puzzling, massive geometric constructions orbiting the system's star, clearly artificial but unlike any known Alliance architecture. Could those be monitoring stations? Captain suggested. Maybe the Alliance has been watching that system since our original experiment. No, Dr. Harrison said slowly, his face pale as he studied the readings. These structures predate our original Prometheus experiment. According to the probe's dating scans, some of these constructions are thousands of years old. A chill ran through the assembled scientists, stared at the sensor data, trying to process its implications. An ancient civilization in the 442 system, a system that the Alliance had declared uninhabitable after humanity's failed experiment. Doctor, can you have the probe investigate one of those structures more closely? Already on it, replied, her fingers flying over her control interface. Adjusting probe trajectory for close approach to the nearest construction. The next few minutes passed in tense silence as the probe maneuvered through space 30 light-years away. When the high-resolution images began arriving through the quantum tunnel, the entire cavern fell silent. The structure was clearly artificial, but built on a scale that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. Crystalline spires stretched for hundreds of kilometers, connected by geometric frameworks that seemed to shift and change even as they watched. Most remarkably, the entire construction was generating controlled quantum fields of the same type that humanity had been learning to manipulate. "My God," whispered Dr. Harrison, "it's a quantum engineering project. Whoever built this was working with space-time manipulation on a massive scale." Studied the images with growing excitement and apprehension. "Doctor, are you detecting any signs of current activity? Power signatures, active systems, anything that suggests these structures are still operational?" "Negative on current activity," reported. "But the quantum field generators are still functional. They're maintaining some kind of stabilizing effect on local spacetime. Actually," she paused, double-checking her readings, "I think these structures are the reason our original Prometheus experiment failed." "Explain." "The quantum fields we generated during the original experiment interacted with the fields from these ancient structures. That's what caused the catastrophic resonance cascade. We weren't just dealing with our own energy output. We were triggering a reaction with technology we didn't know existed. The implications hit like a physical blow. Humanity's greatest failure hadn't been the result of reckless ambition or inadequate safety measures. They had unknowingly attempted to perform quantum engineering in a system where ancient technology was already manipulating space-time. The resulting interaction had nearly destroyed everything within several light-years. "Can you determine what these structures were designed to do?" asked. Dr. Harrison was studying the probe's detailed scans with intense concentration. The architectural patterns suggest some kind of massive transportation network. These aren't just individual constructions. They're components of a larger system that spans multiple star systems. "A transportation network. Look at the quantum field alignments," Harrison pointed to his display. "These structures are designed to create stable wormhole connections across vast distances, but not just point-to-point connections. This looks like a network that could connect dozens, maybe hundreds of different systems." Stared at the evidence before her, pieces of a vast puzzle beginning to fall into place. "A galactic transportation network," she said slowly, "built by a civilization that mastered quantum engineering thousands of years ago." "And then abandoned or destroyed," Captain added grimly. "Which raises the question, what happened to them?" Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the cavern. Doctor's face went white as she studied her displays. "Multiple contacts approaching the system perimeter," she announced. "Alliance fleet signatures looks like a full battle group." Felt her stomach drop. "How long until they reach us?" "At current approach speed, approximately 4 hours. "Recall the probe immediately," ordered. "Shut down the gate and evacuate all non-essential personnel." "Wait," Dr. Harrison interjected. "We're on the verge of the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history. We can't just abandon this research because the Alliance is rattling their sabers." "We can if staying means losing everything we've built," replied firmly. "Doctor, estimated time to bring the probe back through the gate." 15 minutes to complete its current survey and return to the transit point," reported. "The gate can remain stable that long without risking cascade failure." Weighed the risks quickly. 15 minutes versus 4 hours. They had time, but barely. Do it. But the moment that probe is back through, we shut everything down and disperse to secondary positions. The next quarter hour felt like an eternity. Watched as the probe completed its survey of the ancient structures and began its return journey through the quantum tunnel. Around her, technicians worked frantically to prepare the facility for emergency shutdown, while security teams moved equipment to hidden caches throughout Terra Nova's underground networks. Probe transit in 30 seconds, Doctor announced. Held her breath as the sleek device emerged from the swirling energies of the gate, carrying data that could reshape humanity's understanding of the galaxy. The moment it cleared the threshold, began the shutdown sequence. Gate collapse in 10 seconds, she warned. The Prometheus gate's energies began to dissipate, reality reasserting itself as the artificial wormhole collapsed into quantum foam. Within moments, the cavern held only empty air where humanity's greatest achievement had hummed with power. All data secured? Asked. Complete survey records downloaded and distributed to all colony sites, Dr. Harrison confirmed. Even if they capture everything here, the other colonies will have the full data set. Nodded with satisfaction. That had been one of humanity's first lessons in exile: never keep all your secrets in one place. Every breakthrough, every discovery, every technological advance was immediately shared across all 16 colonies. The Alliance might be able to destroy one settlement, but they could never eliminate all human knowledge. Captain, what's our fleet status? All available ships are moving to defensive positions, reported. 18 vessels total, mostly converted colony ships and mining platforms, not exactly a match for an Alliance battle group. Understood the reality of their situation. Humanity's exile fleet had been built for colonization and resource extraction, not military conflict. Against a full Alliance battle group, they would be hopelessly. But they weren't planning to fight a conventional battle. Doctor, how long would it take to restart the gate system? From complete shutdown, about 6 hours, assuming we use the emergency protocols. Too long? What about a partial restart, just enough for small-scale transport? Consider the question. Maybe 2 hours for a limited gate, large enough for personnel transport but not full-scale operations. Smiled grimly. That might be enough. Dr. Harrison, I want you to select a small team of our best researchers and prepare them for immediate evacuation through the gate system. We can't abandon the colonies. We're not abandoning anything, interrupted. We're ensuring survival. If the Alliance wants to occupy our settlements, let them. They'll find empty buildings and basic infrastructure. Meanwhile, our people and our knowledge will be somewhere they can't follow. Captain looked up from her tactical display. You're planning to evacuate through the ancient network. Exactly. We now know that the 442 system contains structures that could serve as gateway points to other parts of the galaxy. If we can access that network, we can establish new colonies beyond Alliance reach. That's incredibly dangerous, Dr. Harrison protested. We don't understand how that ancient network functions. We don't know what happened to the civilization that built it. Sending people through untested alien technology could be suicide. Staying here and letting the Alliance capture our research teams definitely will be suicide, replied. At least this way we have a chance. The debate was interrupted by an urgent communication from the surface. Colony Command, this is Perimeter Station 7. Alliance fleet has just dropped to speed at the system edge. We're receiving a transmission. They're demanding immediate surrender of all personnel involved in unauthorized spacetime research. Felt a surge of cold anger. The Alliance hadn't just come to investigate. They had come to arrest the scientists whose only crime was refusing to accept defeat. After 2 years of exile, they still saw humanity as a threat to be controlled rather than a people with the right to determine their own destiny. Response time, asked. 70 minutes until the fleet reaches orbital insertion. Looked around the cavern at the faces of humanity's finest minds. These people had transformed exile into opportunity, had turned hostile worlds into centers of revolutionary research. They deserved better than to be dragged away in chains by species who feared human potential. Doctor, begin emergency gate restart procedures. Dr. Harrison, select your team. I want our most essential researchers ready for transit in 90 minutes. Captain, begin general evacuation of all surface installations. What about you? Asked. Smiled with grim determination. I'll be staying to meet with our Alliance visitors. Someone needs to buy time for the evacuation, and as former ambassador, I'm the logical choice for negotiations. You can't. I can and I will. Besides, someone needs to stay behind to coordinate with the other colonies. This isn't the end of human expansion. It's the beginning of our real journey into the galaxy. Over the next hour, watched as her people implemented evacuation protocols developed during 2 years of constant Alliance surveillance. Essential personnel and equipment vanished into hidden tunnels and underground facilities. Critical research data was transmitted to distant colonies through quantum-encrypted channels. Most importantly, Dr. Harrison's team prepared for humanity's first journey through the ancient transportation network. Gate restart at 60%, Doctor reported. Limited transport capability achieved. We can send small groups through to the 442 system, but return transit isn't guaranteed until we understand the ancient control systems. Nodded, it was a one-way journey into the unknown, but it was better than waiting for Alliance prison ships. Dr. Harrison, is your team ready? The elderly physicist stood with 7 other researchers, each carrying a portable data core containing humanity's accumulated knowledge of quantum engineering. They looked nervous but determined, exactly the kind of people who would thrive in unexplored territory. Ready as we'll ever be, Harrison replied. Are you sure you won't reconsider? Your diplomatic experience could be valuable if we encounter other civilizations. My diplomatic experience will be more valuable here, keeping the Alliance focused on our existing colonies rather than searching for new ones. Besides, she smiled, you don't need diplomats where you're going, you need pioneers. The gate energies swirled to life once more, creating a portal to ancient mysteries 30 light-years away. One by one, Dr. Harrison's team stepped through the quantum tunnel, carrying human knowledge and ambition into the unknown depths of galactic space. As the last researcher vanished through the gate, ordered the shutdown sequence once more. Within minutes, the cavern appeared empty except for basic geological equipment, nothing that would suggest the revolutionary research that had taken place there. Surface contact in 15 minutes, Captain reported. Last chance to change your mind. Shook her head as she made her way toward the surface elevators. No, Sarah. My place is here, making sure the Alliance thinks they've won while our people find new paths to the stars. As she rode the elevator toward the surface, reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. 2 years ago, they had been defeated refugees, cast out by an Alliance that feared their potential for destruction. Now they were explorers standing on the threshold of discoveries that could reshape the galaxy. The Alliance had tried to contain humanity by exiling them to worthless worlds. Instead, they had provided access to ancient secrets that no other species had ever discovered. They had tried to isolate human colonies to prevent coordination. Instead, they had forced humanity to develop communication and cooperation methods that made them stronger than ever. Most importantly, they had tried to break human spirit through hardship and abandonment. Instead, they had proven that humanity was at its best when facing impossible odds. Stepped onto Terra Nova's surface as the first Alliance shuttles descended from orbit, their hulls gleaming in the alien sunlight. She would meet with their commanders, answer their questions, and allow them to believe they had successfully contained the human threat. Meanwhile, 30 light-years away, 8 human researchers were beginning to unlock the secrets of a galactic transportation network that could carry humanity to distant stars beyond Alliance knowledge or control. The exile was indeed coming to an end, but not in the way anyone expected. 5 years after the Alliance discovered humanity's quantum research facilities, stood in the council chambers once more. But this time, she was not alone. Behind her, representatives of 47 human colonies filled seats that had once held only Alliance species. The chamber's configuration had been altered to accommodate the new reality. Humanity was no longer a petitioner seeking admission, but a power demanding recognition. Across the circular floor, High Counselor's crystalline form seemed dimmer than remembered. The past 5 years had not been kind to the Alliance. What they had expected to be a simple police action against rogue human colonies had become something far more complex and troubling. Ambassador began, his voice carrying none of its former authority. The Alliance Council has reviewed your proposals. Your people's expansion beyond authorized sectors constitutes a clear violation of the exile agreement. Remained standing, her calm demeanor masking the satisfaction she felt at this discomfort. Counselor, as you're well aware, humanity never agreed to be limited to any specific sectors. We agreed to leave Alliance space. We have done so extensively. Murmurs rippled through the Alliance delegation. Could see the fear in their alien faces, the uncertainty that had replaced their former confidence. Over the past 5 years, human colonies had appeared in star systems throughout the galaxy, not as refugees struggling to survive, but as thriving settlements that seemed to possess transportation technology beyond anything the Alliance understood. You speak as though you have somehow achieved faster-than-light capabilities superior to our own, the representative growled. This is impossible. No species has ever. No known species, corrected smoothly. But as we've discovered, the galaxy holds many secrets that the Alliance has never bothered to investigate. She gestured to the holographic display that dominated the center of the chamber. With a thought command, it came to life, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Golden lines connected hundreds of star systems in an intricate web that spanned from the galactic core to the outer rim territories. 5 years ago, Dr. Harrison's research team made contact with the ancient network that spans our galaxy. We call them the Architects, the civilization that built a transportation system connecting virtually every habitable system in galactic space. Your species have been stumbling around the galaxy using crude hyperdrive technology to travel between nearby stars, never realizing that true galactic civilization was possible. The display zoomed in on several systems, showing massive crystalline structures that clearly predated any known civilization. Watched as the Alliance representatives leaned forward, their attention captured by technologies they had never imagined. These structures have existed for over 50,000 years, continued. They're automated, self-maintaining, and perfectly functional. The only requirement for accessing them is a certain level of quantum engineering sophistication, exactly the kind of research you feared humanity would pursue. High Counselor's form flickered with what recognized as distress. If such a network existed, our surveys would have discovered it. The Alliance has explored this galaxy for thousands of years. You've explored the galaxy using your own preconceptions about what was possible, replied. The Architect's structures exist in quantum-shifted space, invisible to conventional sensors. You need the kind of advanced space-time manipulation that your species have always avoided to even detect them, let alone use them. Activated another section of the display, showing detailed scans of human colonies throughout the galaxy. Where the Alliance had expected to find struggling refugee settlements, the images showed thriving cities, advanced research facilities, and industrial complexes that rivaled anything in Alliance space. Humanity now maintains active colonies in over 200 systems, announced. We have established diplomatic contact with 18 species that exist beyond your borders. We have discovered habitable worlds in regions you declared empty. Most importantly, we have learned that the galaxy is far larger and more complex than the Alliance ever imagined. The ambassador's chitinous exoskeleton clicked rapidly, their species equivalent of nervous laughter. You expect us to believe that humans have somehow become the dominant galactic power in just 5 years. Not dominant, said carefully, but certainly no longer contained. We're offering the Alliance Partnership, Counselor, access to the Architect Network in exchange for full restoration of human membership and equal representation in galactic affairs. The chamber erupted in angry chittering, crystalline resonance tones, and other expressions of alien outrage. Waited patiently for the noise to subside, knowing that fear and pride were warring in each of the Alliance representatives. You dare to dictate terms to this council? The ambassador demanded, her multiple eyes glowing with indignation. You were exiled for threatening galactic security. Now you return making demands. His expression hardened. We return because exile has taught us valuable lessons about the true nature of galactic politics. 5 years ago, you cast humanity aside because you feared what we might become. You thought isolation would weaken us. Instead, it forced us to become something greater than we ever imagined. She gestured again, and the display showed images that made several Alliance representatives recoil in shock. Massive human vessels, built using hybrid technologies that combined human innovation with architect engineering principles. Cities that seem to exist partially outside normal spacetime. Research installations studying phenomena that most species considered impossible. Humanity has spent 5 years learning to think beyond the limitations that constrain Alliance civilization, said. We've discovered that the galaxy is not a collection of isolated star systems connected by slow hyperdrive lanes. It's a unified network that allows true galactic civilization. We've found ruins of ancient empires that span thousands of systems. We've made contact with species that have existed in isolation since before your alliance was formed. The display showed images of alien civilizations that were clearly not part of the alliance, crystalline beings that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, energy creatures that lived in the coronas of stars, machine intelligences that had outlasted their organic creators by millions of years. The known galaxy, your galaxy, represents less than 15% of the star systems that support intelligent life, continued. The rest exists in isolation because most species lack the quantum engineering capabilities to access the architect network. Humanity is offering to change that. High Counselor's form had dimmed to barely visible levels. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador? Smiled, finally reaching the moment she had prepared for over the past 5 years. Full partnership between humanity and the Alliance. Human research teams will help Alliance species develop the quantum technologies needed to access the architect network. In exchange, humanity receives full restoration of citizenship rights and equal representation in galactic governance. And if we refuse? The representative asked ominously. Smile didn't waver, but her eyes grew cold. Then humanity continues its expansion using the architect network while the Alliance remains trapped in its small corner of the galaxy. Eventually, the Alliance becomes irrelevant as true galactic powers emerge. She gestured once more, and the display showed a time-lapse projection of galactic development over the next century. Alliance space remained static while human settlements spread throughout the galaxy, connecting with ancient civilizations and unlocking technologies that dwarfed anything the Alliance possessed. This isn't a threat, said softly. It's simply the inevitable result of different approaches to galactic exploration. You can choose to be part of the expansion, or you can choose to be left behind. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Watched the Alliance representatives grapple with a reality they had never anticipated. By trying to contain humanity's potential for growth, they had inadvertently forced humanity to discover growth opportunities beyond their imagination. How do we know you're telling the truth about this ancient network? Asked the delegate, his tentacles writhing with uncertainty. These could be elaborate fabrications designed to intimidate us. Nodded to Captain Sarah, who had been waiting at the chamber's entrance. Activated a portable projector that filled the air above the council chamber with a three-dimensional image of unprecedented clarity and detail. The image showed a human research station existing in what appeared to be folded space. Reality bent around the installation so that it occupied multiple locations simultaneously. Through the quantum distortions, alien structures were visible that clearly belonged to civilizations far more advanced than anything the Alliance had ever encountered. This is Research Station Prometheus 7, explained. Currently located in 17 different star systems simultaneously through controlled quantum entanglement. Our researchers are conducting joint studies with the Ethereal Collective, a species that achieved post-physical existence approximately 2 million years ago. The Alliance representatives stared at the images in stunned silence. Could see them struggling to process the implications of what they were seeing, not just advanced technology, but evidence of civilizations that had progressed far beyond anything they considered possible. The Ethereals have been waiting for a younger species to develop quantum engineering sufficient to establish communication, continued. They're interested in sharing certain technologies that could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness itself, but they're only willing to work with species that have proven they can think beyond conventional limitations. High Counselor's form flickered rapidly, a sign of intense emotional distress in physiology. Ambassador, what you're describing would fundamentally alter the nature of galactic civilization. The implications for our existing governmental structures, our economic systems, our entire way of life. Would be revolutionary, agreed. just as contact between our species was revolutionary 3 decades ago. The question is whether the Alliance has the courage to embrace that revolution or the wisdom to step aside for those who do. Paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle over the chamber. She had spent 5 years preparing for this moment, carefully orchestrating humanity's expansion to demonstrate both their capabilities and their restraint. They could have used their architect network access to launch military strikes against Alliance worlds. Instead, they had chosen to build, to explore, and to learn. "Counselors, the age of small thinking is ending," she said finally. "Humanity offers the Alliance a chance to be part of something greater than any of us could achieve alone. We offer access to technologies that could eliminate scarcity, expand, and open pathways to transcendence that most species only dream about. But the choice must be made freely, and it must be made now. The Architect Network is already attracting attention from powers that make the Alliance seem primitive by comparison. If we're going to establish humanity's place in true galactic civilization, we need partners who share our vision of growth rather than masters who fear our potential." The chamber remained silent for long minutes as the Alliance representatives consulted among themselves through private communication channels. Waited patiently, knowing that fear and ambition were battling in each alien mind. Finally, High Counselor spoke. "Ambassador, this council requires time to evaluate your proposals. The implications of what you've revealed require extensive consultation with our respective governments." Nodded graciously. "Of course, Counselor, take all the time you need. Humanity will continue our expansion and research regardless of the Alliance decision, but we'd prefer to do so in partnership rather than isolation." As the session adjourned and Alliance representatives filed out in subdued clusters, remained at her position, studying the holographic galaxy map. Captain approached from behind, her expression mixing admiration with concern. "Think they'll take the deal?" asked quietly. Smiled as she watched the golden network lines pulse with quantum energy, carrying human ships and messages across vast distances in the blink of an eye. "Some will, some won't. But it doesn't really matter, Sarah. The game has changed completely." "How so?" Gestured to the map, where new connections were appearing daily as human exploration teams discovered additional architect nodes. 5 years ago, the Alliance had the power to exile us because they controlled access to galactic civilization. Now we control access to a level of galactic civilization they never knew existed. Deactivated the display and gathered her materials. They thought they were casting us aside to fade into obscurity. Instead, they forced us to find our own path to greatness. Now we're the ones offering them a chance to avoid being left behind. Captain smiled grimly. "Think any of them will realize the irony?" "Eventually, but by then, it won't matter. Humanity has learned to thrive without their approval or permission. Whether they choose to join us or oppose us, we'll continue growing, exploring, and reaching for possibilities they're afraid to even imagine." Walked toward the chamber exit, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. 5 years ago, I told this council that they would remember the moment they chose to stand against us instead of beside us. Today, I'm giving them a chance to choose again. But this time, we're not asking for permission, we're offering opportunity. As they left the chamber together, looked back one final time at the seats where humanity's accusers had once held absolute authority. Those seats seemed smaller now, diminished by the knowledge that their occupants represented only a tiny fraction of galactic civilization. "Come on, Sarah," said with satisfaction. "We have a galaxy to explore and species to meet and wonders to discover. The Alliance can join us when they're ready to think bigger than their fears." Behind them, the chamber fell into silence, its holographic displays dark and empty. But 30,000 light-years away, human ships were emerging from architect gateways in star systems where no Alliance vessel had ever traveled, carrying humanity's message of growth and possibility to civilizations that had been waiting eons for someone brave enough to reach beyond the known. The exile was over. The real adventure was just beginning.